Well, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Sid and Tonic. Today's story is that of Linda Brown. This one is out there. Let's go. Sid and Tonic! Hello, hello, hello. Oh, so nice to be back. I had a little break for the summer, if you didn't know, and I am back and raring to go. And this case, I picked this case because wow, I'd not heard of it before, and it is something else. There's so many, take notes because you're going to need to keep up with this one. And we are heading to Garden Grove, California. Sounds fancy. I believe it is. It's an affluent area of the US of A. We are heading to 1985, March 19th. In the early hours of the morning, the peace of the neighbourhood would be shattered. We're talking 3:35 a.m. That is unholy. David Brown has returned back to his home after heading out for a nighttime drive because he was having arguments and things were going on at home, and he'd had enough. So he went out, he couldn't sleep, he'd gone for a drive to clear his head. He returned back, and when he then went to go to bed, he finds his wife, Linda Brown, 23, laying on their bed with gunshot wounds to her chest. David rings the police and they arrive at his house shortly afterwards, and they go and check Linda. And the officer that first goes to the scene, he can't find a pulse, but Linda is making gurgling noises. So an ambulance is called and Linda is taken into hospital. Sadly, Linda was pronounced dead around the time that she arrives at the hospital, and she has been shot twice in the chest. Back at the property, the police are interviewing David. Now, David lives at the house with his wife, Linda, 23, now deceased, their baby, Crystal, who is at the property at the time, his other daughter, Cinnamon, she's 14, and Patty, who is 16 years old at the time of the case. Patty is Linda's sister. Now, everybody apart from Cinnamon is accounted for. It's a really unusual name, isn't it? Well, it is here in England. I've never heard of somebody called Cinnamon, and I think I say it funny, so excuse me if I do. I'm going to say it a lot. And yeah, but is it more? It must be more common in America, or is it one of those names that's really out the bag? I don't know, but that's what she's called. She's not there. They can't find her. And David, he said he wouldn't be surprised if Cinnamon had shot Linda. What's occurring here? David goes on to say that he wouldn't be surprised if Cinnamon was the shooter because she was suffering from bad mental health at the time of the incident, and there were family arguments. Linda and Cinnamon didn't get on. There was a sort of, stepdaughter, stepmother rivalry situation, and things were not okay. They didn't like each other. Now, this is all, okay. Then he goes on to say, and she does have a gun. She has a gun in the trailer. So this child with mental health issues has a gun in her, isolated situation. Right. The police then search the property. So they're going around, they're trying to find Cinnamon because it looks like this is the perpetrator of this crime, and it's all falling into place. It's all like tied up neatly in a bow. It's not long before they do find her. She is sort of huddled behind a doghouse in the backyard. And it's not a pretty sight, not one bit. She's covered in her own vomit and a lot. It sounds like when I was reading it just sounds like a scene out of The Exorcist. What is going on with my voice? That's helpful. When they find Cinnamon, she is holding a note that's on pink cardboard, and it says, "Dear God, please forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt her." Cinnamon is then swiftly taken to the police station. No hospital for you. Even though she's very unwell, clearly. I think she was like throwing up all the way to the police station. Yummy. and they interview her at the station, which is I find that a little bit odd because she was so unwell. She was really poorly, and they had a little chat with her there, but she was then, after this, taken to the hospital. They did some tests to see what was going on, what was in her system, and it turned out she had taken an overdose. So it looked very much like it was meant to be a murder-suicide situation. Cinnamon confessed to the murder of her stepmother. She said that she had gone into her room while she was sleeping and shot her in her sleep. And the evidence was all supportive of that. Linda was found, and it looked like the bed hadn't even, she was in bed. So that was corroborated the story that Cinnamon was saying, that she just walked in and shot her in her sleep. And then also they found the empty bottles of pills in the house. Cinnamon had said that she had taken an overdose after killing her stepmother. So it was all adding up, but it was still agreed that Cinnamon would plead not guilty at her trial due to insanity, because it was thought that she was really suffering with her mental health. It all seemed a little off, like things could be explained. Her father testified against her in court and said that she was suffering with her mental health. There was animosity between Linda and Cinnamon. So all of these things were in play, but so she was told to plead not guilty. She did. And she was found guilty, and she was given a 27-year sentence. And it was said that Cinnamon was incredibly shocked by this. It was as if this hadn't even crossed her mind that she would end up in prison for a long time. It's almost as if she thought she was going to get off because of her age, probably. She was 14. That is by no means the end of this story, because there is just so much more. It's like there is a huge behind the scenes of this case. So let's have a look at that. And let's start with David. First of all, what do we know? We know that he has implicated his daughter the minute he could with the police. He said, "I do believe that that Cinnamon could do this." He was very quick to throw her under the bus. He very easily sort of slipped into the police. Well, not slipped in. I think that Cinnamon did this when they were at his house. Now, okay, you might suspect that, but this is his daughter. His daughter. Where's that sort of parental protection? You wouldn't want to believe it, would you? So, and he didn't seem worried about the fact that she was missing. He was just like, I think she killed my wife. So, red flag. And he did testify against Cinnamon in the trial. And there's been lots of cases where parents just, they can't believe that their child will have done something, but he was there ready to paint a very dark picture of his daughter. Just felt off to me. Cinnamon's mother, on the other hand, Brenda Sands, she could not believe that her daughter had done this. Her brain couldn't go there. She just couldn't fathom it. She had a very different image of her daughter, and she wasn't seeing any depression or what was the word that he used? Mental illness, mental health. She wasn't seeing that. There was a cloud of suspicion around the whole thing. Even investigators were a bit like, no one could really put their finger on it, but they weren't sure. David met Brenda when they were both 15 years old. He had previously dropped out of school in the 8th grade, and he was working just low-paid jobs, bits and bobs here and there, nothing really. And when Brenda met David, it was, passion and what have you. And they decided to run away together. They ran away together, and then they married when they were 17 years old. Neither of them had any money, they didn't really have jobs, and they lived predominantly on, I don't know what you call it in the US, welfare, government assistance, I think it is. And then on the 3rd of July in 1970, Cinnamon was born. Their marriage went downhill very quickly. David was very controlling. He wouldn't let her have a driver's licence. He refused. She wasn't allowed to learn to drive. He refused for her to have a job at first, so he wanted complete control and dominance over his wife. He wanted her at home, he didn't want her to have any friends, and this is really common in domestic abuse. It takes any outside influence away so that you can be the only person in their life. It's really horrible. And at this point, he had gone back into education and was now working in the Control Data Institute in LA. Say that quick. He was just absolutely vile to his wife. He would demand sex like 3-4 times a day. Like who has the time? He's working as well. What the deuce? Eventually, he let Brenda go out and get a job. She wasn't allowed to have any friends. She wasn't allowed to go out of the building at lunchtime. If he found out that she was, he would be irate. He started to become violent. He hurt Brenda. He would beat her. Predominantly, he would hurt her when he thought, he often thought that she was having affairs. I wonder why. When someone has it in their brain and they constantly think that someone is doing something, that is normally because they themselves are doing that thing or thinking that thing or what have you. And that was exactly the case. So, I mean, this guy, where does this energy come from and this drive? Because he's demanding sex with his wife, Brenda, 2-3 times a day, but he's also having affairs left, right and centre with other women. What's that about? So he's off doing all of this business, being treacherous, and all the while controlling her, not allowed any friends, not allowed a driver's licence, all the rest of it, and accusing her of cheating on him when he's out dilly-dallying. No, thank you. I just can't. What a terrible human. And then this is just something else. He then says to Brenda, do you know what? In order to make our marriage work, right? He's not going to stop beating her up or cheating on her, no. Well, he convinces her that if they have an open marriage, and I'm doing this because this is not an open marriage, what he's suggesting. If they have an open marriage, that it will save their relationship. Oh, it will help us out. It will save our marriage. And she is like, okay then. Because she desperately wants to make their marriage work. They've got a child together and he is incredibly manipulative. He's not Brad Pitt, so there's got to be something about this guy, I tell you. She agrees to this open marriage, but it's only open, one door's open, the other one is very firmly shut. He is allowed to go off and have relationships with other women. Oh, yeah, you go ahead, you fill your boots, because we've got an open marriage and you're okay with it. But she, not at all. She has to be faithful and loyal and it's only him. But he, off you go. And he was very brazen with it. He would be like chatting up other women in front of people in the town where they lived. It's just really humiliating for Brenda. One day, David brings home a woman called Laurie and announces to Brenda that this is going to be my new wife. Meet Laurie. I mean, how awkward was that interaction? Just like, who wants to be Laurie? And he demands a divorce from Brenda. Now, at first she's like, no. What? No. And then she comes to her senses, because who needs this, right? She gets all of their stuff together, she packs up the house and she moves while he's at work. She just gets, I think she just clears out. She's like, I'm taking this, I'll have the china, thank you. And her and Cinnamon go. He is not happy with that at all. This does not please Lord David, not one bit. And he goes to Brenda's place of work and holds a gun to her head. He's not happy at all. I feel like little Lord David really doesn't like it when he doesn't get his own way, or somebody might, be showing him up. How dare she leave? How dare she pack up and go and take our daughter? And how dare she, even though I have asked her for a divorce? I mean, what did he want her to do? Stay there? Really blows the mind. They get a divorce, and shortly after that, David then marries Laurie. Cinnamon is in the custody of Brenda during the week, and then David has custody on the weekends. all of this goings on has all happened, and David's only 22. So this is his second marriage, and all of this stuff has happened, and he's 22 years old. It's like, geez, slow down. Anyhow, second marriage, here we go. His first marriage broke down because he met Laurie, and his second marriage to Laurie would break down because of Linda. Linda would be his third and fifth wife. Hold on, we'll get there. On the street that he lives on with Laurie now, there is a family called the Baileys. Ethel Bailey is the mother, and she has 11 children, 11 kids. And they are very, very poor. They don't have a lot of money. There are often times where all of the children, they couldn't all eat. It's really sad. So they lived in this in poverty. And then along comes David. David has disposable income, and he's not lavishing that on Laurie. Oh no, what he is doing is he is getting well in there with the Bailey family. He is Mr. Nice Guy. He helps Ethel out. He is present in their home, helps them with things that need doing around the house. He buys them groceries. He buys food. He buys treats for the kids. He even takes them to Disneyland, takes them on holiday. He is just this. He's idolised by the family. It's like he swept in with all of his money and just started to, solve their problems, help them out, make sure that they all get fed and that they've all got nice, clothes. And he's basically grooming this family. He's being very charming, very nice. It's like a love bomb phase of a narcissistic relationship. He's answering their prayers and giving them things that they never thought they could ever have. And that's, it's a big thing, especially when you're a kid. So they love David. All of the kids, they love him very much. And then once he's really in there, and once he's been involved with the family and, he plays with the children and all of this, and he's really sort of sunk his teeth in, he then tells Ethel that he is dying. This is not the first time that he has done this. What happened to this guy? So he has this sort of compulsion to lie about things like that, and he's done it throughout his life. He would tell people that he had cancer, or he had some awful illness or disease. He would tell people along the way in different parts of his life that he was dying. And he does this now with Ethel. He says to her, I have colon cancer and I've got 6 months to live. Who does that? Oh, it's awful. He's really preying on her because now he knows exactly what he wants and how to get it. So he says, because I'm poorly and I haven't got long, I would like the girls, so the girls in the family, to come and look after the house and take care of things, washing, shopping, cleaning, that sort of business, because I'm sick. I'm going to die. And she goes, yeah, sure thing. And he says he'll pay them. He'll pay the girls. So, this nice guy that everyone loves in the family, why not? Yeah, we'll help you out. When he is alone with the girls in his house, it's just so devious, isn't it? He's inappropriate. He teaches them how to steal. He plays games and things that are just dodgy. And they sit on his lap. One of the games that he devised is called Cinnamon Kisses. And, because his daughter Cinnamon is there on the weekends. She's 4 at the time. And he played a game with the girls where they had to kiss him and see who could kiss him for the longest without laughing. Patty, who ends up living with him later on. Patty is 6 and his daughter Cinnamon is 4. So they play together. So his daughter plays with the Bailey girls whenever she's there on the weekend. David doesn't really have cancer. And I always wonder that when people have told a lie like that. Well, he said he was going to die in 6 months and he's still very much there, alive. And, where's that going? I don't get that. Must be a weird thing to be a compulsive liar, because obviously you can't stop it. But you have to get yourself out of so many pickles. So he's in a pickle, but he then has a miraculous recovery. He's like, oh, wow, I'm healed. And that seems to be the end of that. It was said that Ethel was an alcoholic. So perhaps, you know, she wasn't all there, and therefore she wasn't seeing lots of red flags, and she just probably maybe just let that one go. I don't know. But he then said, I'm going to live. And not long after that, he started dating one of the older daughters, Pam. She was 17 and he was 24. And it's a weird thing because it's almost like he was testing, because that, you know, she's over 16, but younger than him, and still very much, you know, she's not an adult. He's an adult. She's still a child. And I don't know if this is what he was doing, but it feels like he was testing the water with Pam. But really, the person that he wanted to be with was Linda. And when he met Linda, she was 11. And it is said that from that point, that's who he had his eye on. Linda, 11-year-old girl. Linda is now 15. But it turns out that from the age of 13, he has been grooming Linda so that they can then have a relationship. And that's why I think he was almost testing the water with Pam to see what would happen, whether Ethel would not be happy with it, or I don't know. But then shortly afterwards, he leaves Pam and he is then with Linda. So it must have, you know, he must have not got the sort of cold shoulder from Ethel or whatever was going on there. And he's then with Linda. She's 15 years old. This is what then ends his marriage with Laurie. She's gone. Turns out Ethel was not now happy with this. So he's dated Pam, who was 17, and then dumped one of her daughters to then get with an even younger daughter, Linda. So Ethel is not happy at this point. She's, no, this is not okay. But all that does is push Linda out of the door. And Linda then moves in with David. And this is where it just goes, this is where it gets spicy. This is where my brain can't even, it just goes to, I mean, if you thought this was all crazy now, you wait. So he marries Linda, the object of his desires. Oh, that seems grim to say. You know, for years he's been grooming her. They get married in 1979. They go to Vegas, of course. And then 2 months later, he serves her with divorce papers because he's met someone else. He's met somebody called Cindy. It's like, what is going on here? Linda is infatuated with David because he's been grooming her from the age of 11. And it's awful and it's horrible and it's abuse. It's child abuse. He's been abusing her. But she doesn't think that. She thinks she's in a loving relationship and that he loves her and going to marry her. And then they get married and then he's divorcing her. But she loves him so much. She is besotted with this man. So when he marries Cindy, he just carries on having an affair with his ex-wife, Linda. Keep up. So he's still sleeping with Linda, but he's now married to Cindy. Honestly, he divorces Cindy after 8 months. 8 months of being unfaithful to Cindy the whole time. And he then goes back to Linda and says, look, should we give it another go? And she says yes, and they remarry. So she was wife 3 and wife 5. He then gets a better paid job. They're quite well off. And he likes this. He's, top dog, loving it. And for somebody that's already controlling and narcissistic, it just fed his fire and his ego and, just a terrible, terrible storm. Also, up to this point, he has just always had whatever he wants. He just does what he wants, gets what he wants, gets married, gets divorced, cheats on people. No one stands up to him. It just sounds like he's lived a life. I didn't breathe. He's lived a life of whatever you want. Whatever you want, mate. You go ahead. You get it. No one's going to stop you. So Linda and David back together. Holy matrimony. More money. Cozy, cozy. He also has cinnamon still every weekend. And then Patty moves in because she's 11 at the time. yeah, 11. And she's not having a great time at home. I think she's one of the only children that's left living with Ethel at this point, and Ethel's an alcoholic. And she also has a brother. Her brother was abusing her. So she was in not a very nice home situation. And Linda knew this, and Linda took Patty in. She was like, she's got to come and live with us. She's not okay at home. They probably were actually quite united in ways at this point, because they all lived under King David. You know, it was like he was the king of the castle. He was still very controlling. He just had control now over 3 people instead of just 1. He was controlling over Cinnamon, he was controlling over Patty, and he was very controlling over Linda. So that probably almost like, you know, the girls were united in this weird toxic family system. In 1984, Linda fell pregnant with David's baby, and then she went on to have the baby, and that baby was called Crystal. When she was pregnant with Crystal, Linda wasn't having a very good time of it. She felt very uncomfortable because all of a sudden she was pregnant, her body was changing, she was still very young, and her sister Patty was 16 at this time, and she was young and beautiful, lovely slim figure, nothing was changing about her, and she started to feel jealous of Patty. Now, I don't think that was the only reason. Just, oh, look, I'm pregnant, and now, you know, some women feel really beautiful when they're pregnant. I didn't, but some do. And, you know, that whole glowing thing and all that, you get nice skin for a bit. But I think that she was picking up on something else, and I think she knew it, whether it was subconscious or conscious. But from the age of 11, again, 11, David had actually been grooming Patty. So he had been telling her that he loved her, and from the age of 11 he had been telling Patty that he would leave Linda, her sister, and be with her one day. But she was just, you know, too young at that point. But he was saying that he wasn't happy in his marriage with her sister, and that her sister wasn't very nice to him, and he was just planting these seeds in her mind all the time from the age of 11. And from the age of about 12, 13, he then started to abuse Patty. So when everybody else was out of the house, he was abusing her. And not that she thought that he was. She felt like she was in a loving relationship, a secret relationship with him, and that he loved her and adored her. And she idolised this man. After baby Crystal has been born, Cinnamon actually catches... I mean, it's a dangerous game, isn't it? He's quite brazen, but again, he's never had any consequences for his actions. But Cinnamon actually sees Patty and her dad kissing. He tells her, like, don't say anything, like, please, you can't say anything. And again, like, Cinnamon is very loyal to her dad. And she's like, yeah, like, he said things like it would break the family apart, he would have to leave, he wouldn't be able to see her anymore, and he just, yeah. And she didn't want that. She wanted to see her dad. Cinnamon was flitting between her dad and her mum, so if she fell out with their mum, she'd go and live with their dad, and yeah, so he was a big part of her life. And again, she idolised him. He was very good at that. He was like charming, manipulative. Yeah, he knew exactly what to say. Not long after this, David decided that Linda had to go, and he couldn't divorce her, he couldn't leave. He needed her to be dead. Cinnamon was really unhappy with this. He'd confided in her and said that this was what had to happen. It had to be this way because otherwise he would pay alimony, or I don't really understand. Whatever he said, he made it sound like if he just left her, then they would be in an awful situation. He wouldn't be able to see Crystal, and the whole family would be split apart. Whereas if Linda was dead, they could all stay together as a family unit, baby Crystal, Patty and Cinnamon, and him, David, King David. So he started to sort of, again, it was a grooming process. He started to tell the girls, and it went on for years, really, because it started when Patty was 11, but he would drip things in about how Linda was nasty, unkind, manipulative, how she was trying to ruin his businesses. And he'd give them all this information, and slowly but surely he basically painted this picture of a horrible, horrible woman that was trying to destroy their life. But it was all secret, it was all quiet. She was really clever, she was deceitful. She was nice to them, but that was so they didn't find out about it. And then he told them that she was planning to kill him, and he'd found out about this plot and that she was going to succeed. So it was either her or him. And they idolise David. He can't be killed. And all of this just over the years, in their formative years as well, just slowly showing them, telling them, proving to them. But really, there wasn't much proof. It was all with his manipulation and what he was saying. He made both of the girls, Cinnamon and Patty, truly believe, squeaky chair, truly believe that Linda was out for him, that she was trying to take the businesses, steal his money, and then end his life. Once he'd planted these evil seeds, they were sprouting. The girls were believing all of this. He then started talking about, we need to make a plan. How are we going to do it? And they all discussed at length many different ways of murdering Linda. One of which was to push her out of a moving vehicle, things like hitting her over the head, like, bludgeoning her to death, basically. Wonderful. And it was then decided upon that Cinnamon would shoot Linda. I'm not sure how they got there, but this was what was said. And David, of course, he was like, all I know is that it can't be me. It can be one of you, but it can't be me. And it was really strongly put upon Cinnamon. Likely because Patty and David, they want to be together, don't they? He's been grooming her and now she's 16 and he wants to marry Patty. So if Linda is gone and Cinnamon is the one that has committed the murder, she will be out of their hair, won't she? So then Patty and David can live their life happily ever after, as if he's only going to find someone else, isn't he, and probably kill Patty off. But they can live happily ever after, and with baby Crystal. Plan. That's the plan. But Cinnamon doesn't know that. Cinnamon just thinks, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do anything for you. And he used to say to her, if you love me enough, if you loved me, you would do this. If you loved me. So they've got their plan, and that night they've gone to bed, and Cinnamon just thinks, okay, well, it's not happening then. Phew. Her and Patty were up watching TV, and then when she realised that everything was calmed down, she went to bed, and so did Patty. So they went into their room. However, in the early hours of the morning, David would come to the girls' room. He woke the girls up. He gave the baby, Crystal, to Patty, and he gave the gun to Cinnamon. He told her to shoot the gun through a pillow and gave her a pillow so that it would muffle any noise. And then he said he was going out, and when he got back, he expected Linda to be dead. And that is exactly what happened. Cinnamon went into their bedroom. She shot her stepmum, Linda, in her sleep. She shot her once, and then the gun got tangled in the pillow. So she took the pillow back to her bedroom, her and Patty. And this is where just anything could have happened. But the gun then, when they were trying to get the gun out of the pillow so that she could, get the gun free of the pillowcase or the pillow, it went off again. So there was a gunshot in Patty and her bedroom. That was not meant to happen. While they're doing this, they realise that Linda is moaning. She's not dead. She's moaning in her bed, in her bedroom. She's laying there, shot. I mean, she was asleep. It's just, the whole thing is like, whoa. So Patty says to Cinnamon, you've got to go back and finish this. You can't leave her like that. She's like moaning, and we said that she'd be dead. So Cinnamon then has to go back in to the bedroom and shoot her stepmom again. David orchestrated the whole thing. David left 2 pill bottles in the house and then told Cinnamon that after she had shot Linda, she was then to go and take all of those pills. He was like, trust me, it will be enough to knock you out, but it won't kill you. It turns out that the amount of drugs that he had left in these pots would have killed her. It was a lethal dose, and it really felt like he had his plan all along was that Cinnamon would die as well that night. And it didn't succeed because she was so sick. So she took the pills, and probably with the panic and the horror of everything that had happened, because she was so upset, and she had huge amounts of drugs, but she was really, really sick, and that saved her life. And while his daughter sat in prison, not having a very good time, traumatised, awful, horrible thing to happen, and then you're in prison, and the shock of it, because he promised her that she would not go away for very long because she was young, and they were going to plead that she was insane, and that was the whole idea. He told her she would get away with this. So that's why she was so shocked, because she believed her dad. All the while, her dad is on the outside of prison, and he had taken out some very large insurance policies on Linda. Of course he had. Of course. So there was no real grieving period. He secretly marries Patty not long after Linda has died, and then he starts buying properties, big houses, just splashing his cash. He's like, whoa, lavish lifestyle. He's living it up with his now secret wife, Patty. He, of course, is then cheating on Patty immediately. She finds out, but she's then pregnant with David's baby. So she has a baby, and the whole cycle is just beginning again. What is this guy? And also oh God, it's just so, it's unbelievable. And it's just don't you just want to chill out, mate? What? Cinnamon is unaware of a lot of things that are going on the outside. She turns 18, and an officer starts to talk to her about her case. And I think he just never really truly believed what had gone down, and he thought there was more to it. Started chatting with her and started telling her about her father and about Patty, and the fact that Patty had had a baby. And Cinnamon knew immediately that was her father's child, because she knew how controlling he was. She knew that she'd seen him kissing Patty. She knew that what was going on. She wasn't stupid, and she knew that this baby was her father's, and that it all came together. You know, when all what's it called? It all falls into place. It's like the Matrix. She's like, what? And she realises, I was scapegoated here. They, all along, this is what they wanted, and now they're living it up. Lavish lifestyle. They've had a baby together. Come along. And it doesn't take long for her to start telling her truth. They can't just take her word for it. She's a convicted murderer. That's not going to go down well in court. But they invite her father to come, she invites her father to come and visit in prison. And they start chatting, and she's wearing a wire. They chat, and she says, do you know what, Dad? I'm really feeling guilty, and I feel like I need to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth. And he then starts talking about, don't tell the truth. And then, I mean, it's not unbelievable, because he is something else. He tells her, do you know what? Don't tell the whole truth. Just say that it wasn't you, it was Patty. And I will say that is what happened too. But I was just trying to protect her. So he's ready. He's just there, set ready to throw another person under the bus to protect himself. They're not sure that they've got quite enough from this conversation. So they then she invites Patty and her dad to a meeting at the prison. And they're talking. And obviously they think it's private. She's wearing a wire again. But then they get some real juicy stuff. They get, real conversation about what actually happened that night. The whole thing. It's all there. They've got all the evidence that they need to convict Patty and to convict David. Woohoo. In 1990, David and Patty were convicted of their crimes. Patty was sentenced to a few years. She served a few years in prison for her part in what happened. David, he carried on being mischief. He hired, or attempted to hire, a hitman while he was before trial to eliminate Patty and some members of the prosecution team. Who do you think you are, Jason Bourne? And I think it was just somebody that was in prison with him that was about to get released. And he was like, I'll give you such and such. You need to kill her and these people. He went straight to the police and was like, by the way, this guy, he wants me to kill these people. this is what's happened, there you go. What the deuce? That did not go well for him in court, because obviously that was then evidence against him. Like, oh, and he hired a hitman. Why would you do that if you were innocent? Cinnamon ended up serving 7 years of her sentence. There'll be loads of different opinions about it, because she served 7 years. She was the one that pulled the trigger. She did kill Linda. But yeah, it's tricky because she was a child and she was heavily manipulated into doing so. So I feel like, and Patty was also a child and she was heavily manipulated into like plotting and all the rest of it. It's such they were groomed from a very, very young age. So, well, Cinnamon, all of her life, really. So I feel like justice was served with Cinnamon and Patty. They did have to go to prison. They did have to serve some time, and they did do it, and then they were released. David, on the other hand, was the mastermind behind the whole thing. And the only thing he didn't do was pull the trigger. And he was an adult. So he fully developed mind, or maybe. He was then sentenced to life in prison. He died in 2014. He was 61. I think it was natural causes. This guy just went around and just caused heartache and pain wherever he went, didn't he? Just really awful, really awful. And so I'm so glad that Cinnamon found it in her, and that officer, whoever it was, give him a medal, that sort of carried on and just thought, this isn't right. I'm so glad that it all came out, because it could not have. It really could not have. I'm glad it did. I was going to say earlier, it's almost like the plot of a film, and they did make a film about this story. Love, Lies and Murder came out in 1991, two-parter, that TV film. And there's a book as well, If You Loved Me, I believe. If You Loved Me. I mean, the fact that he said that, just come on. And it's awful. Wasted life. Linda lost her life. And effectively, he stole so much from Cinnamon and Patty and all of the other women, young women, that he groomed. It must be a very horrible feeling to have been, have someone in your mind making you think things. It must feel really awful and horrible. What a sly guy. And that is all I have for you on today's case. Boom. I'm so glad to be back. It was a glorious break. It was lovely to have time just focus with the kids. My youngest has just started in secondary, so I had a bit of a freak out about it. I hope you're all well. I hope you're having a lovely September. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back next week with another true crime story. Be good.